welcome to this explainer. You know that feeling when you take a personality test and it just feels kind of flat? Like it's only capturing a two-dimensional version of who you actually are? Well, today we are diving deep into the massive architectural leap from Discover V2 to the groundbreaking Discover V3. We're literally looking at a total paradigm shift in how human traits are measured and mapped. Here's our roadmap for today. First, the baseline, Discover V2. Then, beating the bias, the proverb branching upgrade. Scientific mapping and telemetry, the intermediate state, and finally, we'll wrap up with the compatibility matrix. So let's start with part one, the baseline, Discover V2, setting the foundation. To really grasp the genius of V3, we first have to acknowledge the very solid foundation laid by the V2 Swipe Edition. You see, V2 moved us away from those generic, boring, agree or disagree virtues that kind of plagued older tests. Instead, it introduced these forced-choice, swipe-native scenarios. Basically, by forcing users through 30 to 34 rapid swipes across 6 binary dimensions, it generated 64 distinct character types. It was fast, and it used mixed keying, meaning you couldn't easily guess which trait you were being tested on. This was a huge step in preventing people from gaming the system, making it way more discriminative than anything that came before it. All right, moving to section 2, beating the bias, the flaw in standard testing. So here's the thing. There was a central tension with V2, and honestly with pretty much all standard personality testing, that really needed a radical fix if we were going to get to the absolute core of human behavior. And that tension is social desirability bias, or impression management. Basically, when we read literal behavioral statements in high-stakes scenarios, like, say, matchmaking or a job application, our cognitive defense mechanisms just kick in. I mean, if an app literally asks, "Are you manipulative?" nobody is going to swipe yes, right? Even if they actually are. We unconsciously curate this socially acceptable persona just to fake good. Which brings us to section 3, the proverb branching upgrade, a cognitive Trojan horse. So the absolutely crucial question is, how do you bypass a user's psychological defenses to get to the actual truth? How do you get past that impression management we just talked about? Well, Discover V3 introduces what's basically a cognitive Trojan horse. It's a two-tiered proverb branching system. First, you react to an abstract cultural proverb by just swiping instinctively. And then, based on that initial gut reaction, the system dynamically branches to a specific, literal behavioral scenario. This secondary prompt is what actually measures the exact intensity, or what the system calls the delta vector, of your trait. Let me give you an example. Before the system ever asks how you handle strategy or interpersonal trust, it asks which of these proverbs you relate to more: playing your cards close to your chest or wearing your heart on your sleeve. Because proverbs encode this abstract cultural wisdom, users end up projecting their underlying traits onto the imagery before they even realize which psychological dimension is being measured. It's brilliant, really. Your defenses are completely down because you think you're just evaluating a metaphor, not judging your own morality. So, unlike V2's single card scenarios, which just gave you literal outcomes, V3 uses this dual-layer approach. It secures maximum measurement precision, all while keeping you totally engaged in a fun, gamified experience. And behind the scenes, it's quietly pulling highly accurate, uncurated psychometric data. Okay, section 4, scientific mapping and telemetry, under the hood. Now, V3 backs up all this engaging, gamified interface stuff with incredibly rigorous, longitudinal, hard science. These 6 proprietary dimensions, they don't just come from thin air. They are strictly mapped against the absolute gold standards of behavioral psychology, the scientifically validated Hexaco and 5-factor models. For instance, core conduct maps directly to honesty-humility, which assesses sincerity versus strategic manipulation. Scope and vision maps to openness to experience. By aligning with decades of rigorous, peer-reviewed research, V3 provides immense psychological validity that can actually predict long-term relationship satisfaction and stability. And get this, V3 actually utilizes an invisible lie detector. Seriously. Behind the scenes, the application runs a background chronometer that tracks your interaction telemetry. If you swipe in under 650 milliseconds, the system catches it and applies a heuristic penalty. It actively flags and invalidates rushed, unconsidered tests. So no, you literally can't just speedrun your way to a perfect personality type. The telemetry ensures total data integrity. Moving right along to section 5, the intermediate state, ending binary rigidity. Looking at the scoring mechanics, V3 tackles another major issue with personality assessments, which is binary rigidity. V2 was heavily binary. You are basically either a 1 or a 2 in a trait. But human psychology is rarely just black or white, right? So to fix this, V3 introduces intermediate states, denoted by an X modifier. After all the dynamic branching and delta math is calculated, if a user's normalized score falls within a perfectly balanced threshold of -0.33 to +0.33, they get this X state. This means they aren't artificially forced into an extreme pole when they're actually right in the middle. This mathematical nuance is a real game changer because it unlocks highly tailored, balanced, descriptive paragraphs in your final report. By doing this, it completely neutralizes the Barnum effect. You know, that horoscope-like phenomenon where people identify with vague, generic statements that could apply to literally anyone. Your profile becomes truly, contextually yours, acknowledging your balanced traits instead of forcing a fake extreme. And finally, Section 6, the compatibility matrix, the ultimate payoff. This is where we reach the ultimate value proposition of 3. Its highly advanced approach to interpersonal compatibility. Decades of relationship science confirm that a perfect match isn't just about finding an exact clone of yourself. It requires a delicate balance. Sometimes you need homophily, which is compatibility through shared, similar traits. But other times you need heterophily, compatibility through contrasting, complementary traits that actually balance each other out. The V3 algorithm calculates matches based on this exact dynamic logic. For your core ethics, that's core conduct, and your openness to the world, scope and vision, you need strict homophily. Misalignments there will destroy fundamental trust. But for extroversion and agreeableness, the system actually rewards complementary, opposite traits. Think about it. An extrovert and an introvert pairing actually prevents social exhaustion, while a highly direct person pairs beautifully with an accommodating person to balance external advocacy with internal negotiation. The system is honestly so advanced that it even identifies destructive interference patterns. For instance, if 2 highly neurotic individuals pair up, it outputs a volatile emotional loop warning. It literally points out the high risk of constantly escalating shared anxieties and suggests that they might require a more resilient external anchor to process stress safely. It doesn't just pat you on the back and say, you match. It explains the exact mechanical reality and the potential pitfalls of your specific interpersonal dynamic. So, with its psychological proverbs acting as cognitive Trojan horses, its rigid interaction telemetry preventing fake results, and its scientifically backed compatibility matrix that truly understands when opposites attract, V3 is an absolute paradigm shift from the groundwork laid in V2. It leaves us with one incredibly fascinating question. If your deepest traits are hidden even from yourself, what hidden truths will Discover V3 uncover about your next major connection?